Good evening. I'm Hillary Bird here at CBC North's Yellowknife studio, and welcome to our special broadcast of our Candidates Forum for the 2025 federal election. We are now 6 days away from what could be a very close race. And this month, we've been listening to you, people across the territory. Tell us about the issues that matter most. Tonight, we're going to put some of those concerns and questions to the candidates. Here is a sample of what you told us.
The rising food prices is one of the bigger ones. Also, I guess housing.
It's just terrible. You look at all the people that are just, there's probably 5, 6, 10 people in some houses that are, we're living in old 50, 60-year-old houses and getting condemned. And a lot of people are sick, and it's all because these houses are so old. And
that would be really good for our communities to be able to have proper runways.
My dreams of wanting to own a home are being quickly dashed by everything that's going on in the world right now.
Being in a small community, it's really hard to access emergency medical care. And not only that, seasonal care as well.
Some of the big ticket items I see is, and our number one barrier for economic development is the drug crisis that's going around in every little Indigenous community. Right, this is a crisis that has been ignored totally.
I feel like they haven't really supported Indigenous initiatives and reconciliation because we're always left on the wayside.
Our families are growing, and the older children or the older ones are staying home longer. So we want to they want to start their own families, and we want to support them by trying to help them with housing.
I think there's just so much political turmoil going on in the world right now, everything to do with the United States. So it's having a federal government that will stand up to or protect our best interests and stuff.
Those were just some of the people we'll be hearing from tonight, speaking about the issues that matter most to them in this election. Right now in the studio with me are 4 people who want to represent the Northwest Territories in the House of Commons for the next 4 years. Calvin Cochillia represents the NDP. Rebecca Alty is representing the Liberal Party. Rainbow Eyes is here with the Green Party by video conference. And Kimberly Fairman is the candidate for the Conservative Party. Good evening to you all, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to do our best to give you each an equal amount of time to speak. I'll ask a question. You'll have 2 minutes to answer. Then we will sound a buzzer, and we will give you a minute each for rebuttals. So when your time is up, we will play this sound. All right, so we're all set to begin. We figured out before the broadcast who was going to go first. So the first question here will begin with Kimberly Fairman with the Conservative Party. Let's begin with some introductions. For 2 minutes, tell us about yourself and why you want this job.
Great. Thanks so much. And thanks for everybody who's tuned in tonight. I was born and raised in the Northwest Territories, and I've lived in large and small communities across the territory. I've followed and worked with leaders in the territory my whole life. I have over 20 years of experience in the federal public service in senior positions where we work to incorporate views of the Northwest Territories on a national level. And I also worked as a nurse in the N.W.T health system. I have a lot of experience in making decisions on issues of national and international relevance and taking into consideration the views of the people who live here and their realities. I'm so proud to be from the North because I know who we are and I know what we can achieve when we're doing our best. We're strong and we're self-reliant and we care about each other. We look out for each other. Currently, I live in Yellowknife, and I've been traveling throughout the territory through the fall and winter, as well as during the campaign. And I usually spend about 2 to 3 days in communities when I can, attending events or stopping in and talking with people. I've met elders in Toledo who were so generous with their time and honest about their views. I danced in Delaney, and I shared food with the people of Inuvik. I berry picked in Fort McPherson, and when I tour communities today, people talk to me about their worries. Many of the clips that you played earlier represent a lot of the views that I heard on those travels. They're worried about what's happening in the territory. I'm here because I think we have so much potential and it can achieve so much more. That's not possible with the current Liberal government. Under them, we're moving backwards, and they don't seem to think that we're worthy of meaningful investment here in the North for infrastructure or protection from crime, and that our way of life isn't worth protecting either. They tell us one of the things in nice speeches, but a lack of results speak for itself.
All right, sorry, you heard the ding there. Kimberly, thank you so much for that. We're going to go now. Second on our list is Rainbow Eyes, the candidate for the Green Party. Rainbow Eyes, tell us about yourself and why you want this job.
Awesome, thank you. Gail Kessler, Nuko, I'm Rainbow Eyes. I'm a member of the N.W.T, Awitlala First Nation. Our traditional territory is Night Inlet. I'm the deputy leader of the Green Party. I'm a counselor for my nation. I'm a trained land guardian through the Stewardship Technician Training Program through Vancouver Island University. I worked on the land and learned how to really be caretakers for the land. I went to Fairy Creek, which is Canada's largest act of civil disobedience, where we followed the call of the elders, Elder Bill Jones from the Pacheedaht First Nation, and we stood up for Mother Earth. We stood up for the trees. We came together as a community and as the people of Canada, to say we want to protect the trees. And I was in prison last week for this. I'm out now. We're taking my charges to the Supreme Court of Canada. And through this experience of working in my nation, protecting the forest, advocating and being a voice for Mother Earth, I know that it's needed right now, especially in politics and the world that we see right now. More people have to stand up, and that's why I'm doing this. And that's why I am so honored to be here to be a representative for the Green Party, as well as the Northwest Territories, to be on this amazing panel with everybody, because we have to talk about what was said, the residential schools and affordable housing and affordable food, and ensuring that the economy does not go ahead of the wellness of the people. These are cultural and core issues to Indigenous people. This is what needs to get out into the political world, because now our governments are not listening to the Indigenous people, going to them for advice.
Rainbow
and I
Eyes,
feel
I'm gonna have to cut you off there. Sorry, that's just our dinger for that we're out of time. Thank you so much. We're gonna go now to Rebecca Alty, the candidate for the Liberal Party. Rebecca, tell us about yourself and why you want this job as MP.
Thank you. So I was born and raised here in Yellowknife, and over the years I've worked in public service, nonprofit, and at the Divik Diamond Mine. For the past 13 years, I've served on Yellowknife City Council, first as a councillor and then as mayor. Outside of work, I've been very involved in our soccer community, playing, coaching, and even helping train other coaches. I've also served as the president of the Northwest Territories Association of Communities and sat on national and Arctic boards that support communities across Canada and the circumpolar world. Thanks to my work and volunteer roles, I've had the chance to travel around the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, across Canada, and to other Arctic communities. And when I have some free time, I enjoy walking, gardening, and reading. As a leader, I believe in teamwork. I think we get the best results when we listen to experts, respect data, and include both community and traditional knowledge in our decisions. Now, I don't have to remind folks at home that we're facing some serious challenges, like the high cost of living, housing issues, the drug crisis, public safety, the economy, and climate change. Not only here in the Northwest Territories, but across Canada and across the world, really. On top of that, we're seeing real threats to Canada's economy and Arctic security from the U.S. That's why I believe Mark Carney and our Liberal team are the right choice to protect Canadian interests. This past weekend, we released our full Liberal platform. It includes a clear plan to grow our economy and make smart investments that support Canadians. I'll speak to some of these initiatives tonight, but you can also find more information on my social media pages, or feel free to reach out and I'm happy to answer any questions. So thank you again for having me tonight.
All right, Rebecca, thank you. We go now to Kelvin Cochilia from the N.W.T party. Kelvin, introduce yourself and tell us why you wanted to run in this campaign.
Merci for the invitation and merci for everyone that's tuning in. Kelvin Cochilia Siye, Bitrako Zonhante, New Democratic candidate Ga Deza. Bichoko Nade, Isandon 2011 to 2021. It's Simba Nawu, Sakala Tsala, Early Learning and Childcare Education Culture Employment. It's on Simba Nawu, Management Board Secretariat. My name is Calvin Kichilia. I come from the community of Bichoko in the Clinton region, and I worked for the territorial government for 14 years. 10 years as a renewable resource officer, year and a half as a financial coordinator for early learning and childcare, and a year and a half as a management board secretary. More recently, I am now a permanent employee with environment and climate change with the waste reduction management team. Growing up in a small community, I was brought up on the notion that you have to be strong like two people, strong in your culture and way of life, as well as Western society and using the Western institution to find success. Here in the Northwest Territories, we have 50% Indigenous and Inuit, as well as 50% non-Indigenous. And with this notion of being brought up, it gives me the perspective to ensure that I'm able to work with the diversity that we have here in the Northwest Territories among our 33 communities and 11 official languages. And visiting the communities, it gives me the opportunity to hear from the residents, the leaders, and elders. And having the ability to know my culture, my language, allowed them to open up and share what is important to them in their communities, as well as their respected region. And being a candidate from 2021 and 2025, I learned you can't have a one-fit-all solution. So what you try to do is you try to find a domino effect that will align with everyone's priorities amongst the different communities. And I feel like I will be able to share that tonight. Right on. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for respecting that. Again, that is the noise that you will hear when the candidate's 2 minutes is up. We're not going to do any rebuttals to that question. We're going to move on to our second question here. We'll begin with Rainbow Eyes, since you went second there. Rainbow Eyes, where have you been campaigning? And maybe if you could tell us about one of your most memorable moments on the campaign this month.
Hey, yeah. We've been having some really good calls with the Green Party and just bringing people in. And because I'm not from the Northwest Territories, learning about the infrastructure, learning the governance of the nations in the Northwest Territories, just learning about the renewable energy sources that Yellowknife and all the small communities are connected with has been really amazing. I've sent out emails as well and got some really good information back. And I really feel like it's been a really beautiful learning experience for myself because, you know, connecting with the people, connecting with the communities is what I've done in my own nation and what I've done in the forest. So I really feel like that correlates to how government should be run. Connecting to the people is number one. I mean, we have people here where I'm in Campbell River where some of the leaders running for the Conservative Party aren't showing up talking to the people. So it's so important to make those one-on-one connections. And I think that's what I'm trying to do and what our connections with the Green Party are really helping me to do. And I'm learning a lot. And I'm bringing what I have learned in my experiences to really bring the voice of the people to the federal government, because that's what needs to be done right now. So yeah, it's been good. Thank you.
Rainbow Eyes, thank you so much. We will go now to Rebecca with the Liberal Party. Where have you been campaigning? And tell us about one of your most memorable moments on the road this month.
Thank you. So, yeah, I made it to my 20th community today. So, from the south, Fort Smith, all the way up to Tuck. For those communities that I haven't been able to make it to, Sax Harbor, Polituck, Ulahaktuk, have been reaching out to residents, to leadership, to meet with folks. And then outside of the FaceTime and getting into the communities, which I think it's really important to get into the communities, but Also challenging with a territory, a riding that is the size of France, Spain, and Portugal all put together, and in 36 days. Also reaching residents through Facebook, Instagram, completing and engaging with the media. So this is our second debate that participating in, and 2 more at the schools this week, and the final one with the chamber on Thursday night. So plenty of door knocking. I would say when I was in Delaunay, getting to go in and see, there was a family that was harvesting a caribou and making some dry meats, and so being able to sit around the table and talk about issues of concern and what folks want to see for the Northwest Territories. So not only the concerns, but the dreams and the opportunities that come. So great conversations throughout the North. And if I haven't had a chance to chat with you, but you would like to talk further, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Calvin, to you, where have you been heading on the campaign this month, and maybe a special story that you'd like to share?
So more recently, I just returned from the Bilford Delta. I was able to visit the communities in Nunavik, Klavik, and Tuk. In the Klavik, they had the Mat Trapper Carnival, so it's pretty neat just to be there and just timing. What I noticed with all the different communities right now is that we're all facing similar crises with healthcare, housing, affordability, as well as wellness and healing and lack of infrastructure in all of our communities. And communities are starting to come together. I think they're understanding that there's, 3 levels of government, where the federal government along with Indigenous government sit at the same tier, as well as territorial, municipality, and towns. And with the situation we're facing, people are realizing that we all have to work together. And with the New Democratic Party and with me creating a platform that's going to bring the northern issues and priorities to Ottawa, makes me a strong partner, as well as, again, with having that notion of being brought up in a culture and way of life and seeing the success that I was able to get for myself at 35 years of age. A lot of leaders are looking at that as being the next role model for the young and upcoming leaders within their own communities. A lot of our leaders right now have been there for a good 2 decades, and they understand that it's time to pass the torch. And they're hoping that if I am successful, that I'll be that person that could help their community leaders in the future and see how Ottawa can play a big partner when it comes to policy and funding. And they already understand that because they do have self-government, they can also advocate for their own infrastructure, housing, healthcare needs. But they definitely need a party at the federal level, an ally. And I'd say once we get into the more detailed questions, I'll basically share more.
There we go. Thank you. Kimberly, on to you. I know you mentioned some of the places that you've been and some of the things that you've done, but if you could tell us more about where you've been campaigning and if you have a memorable story you'd like to share.
Great, thanks. I've been so fortunate actually to be able to travel to most communities in the territories and, as I explained, have a little bit more time to not just visit, but to experience, being in the community, being able to be on the land in some of those instances, and really being able to talk to families and some members of the community more than once on some of my visits. I think some of the more memorable things, or things that I will keep in mind as I go forward, is how honest people are being about the issues that affect them, sharing their views. Whether or not we agree or disagree, there has been a lot of respect. There's been a lot of honesty and a lot of solutions that are shared as well. I think the biggest impression that I have when I think about being in federal politics and being able to represent the views of the people in the Northwest Territories is that many of the communities and many community members are already working towards solutions to some of the issues that they face. I think there are federal policies and programs that aren't working for them. And I think that, it's imperative that we actually listen to what people are saying, that we make change based on what they're sharing with us. And the other thing that has really impressed me and what I will take back is that in many cases, people in the Northwest Territories actually know what the solutions are for some of the issues, and what they need is somebody to get behind them, somebody who will get behind them and champion the issues and the solutions that they're coming up with on their own. I think, the other impressive thing is just how different each of the regions are, in terms of some of the politics that exist there, certainly some of the social structures, and then the land itself.
All right, Kimberly, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Thank you all for that. Now, time to dive into some of the issues that we'll be addressing. Housing is one of the top issues. I think almost all of you mentioned it. We've been hearing about, of course, long wait lists for public housing, overcrowding, low vacancy rates for rentals, all of these contributing to a housing crisis in the Northwest Territories. Here is Satu Grand Chief Wilbert Cochon from Cova Lake.
Self-government is done, and they are going to need a lot of housing for people who want to move back and start working for the band or the new government. So we are shortage. And then I think right now they're starting to buy a lot of staff housing so they can get them in. I don't know when that would happen, but probably need more funding and more resources to help us. And at first it's going to be expensive, but in the end, once you start working on it, I think it'd be good. And it seems like people that are that get in federal really can't do much because there's only one seat, and they don't really have a say. Like maybe I think McLeod did pretty well, I think, and I hope they can continue that.
There was Wilbur Cochon. He is the Grand Chief of the SAT2. And so, Rebecca, starting with you, what will you do if elected to build more homes across the North? Please be as specific as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Hillary, and thanks to the Chief for the question. So over the past 10 years, the Liberal government has invested over $700 million directly into housing in the Northwest Territories. And for the first time ever, Indigenous governments were receiving the direct funding, so they were able to address the housing needs of their communities. And I do just want to comment on the point of just having one MP. I do think that it's important that we work together with other MPs. So it's from the territories, from northern provinces, with MPs that share similar concerns to be able to amplify our message. But one of the things the Liberal government is committing is $6 billion in housing. And so it will be for deeply affordable as well as shelters, and really having that focus on housing and mental health outcomes. And so, again, continuing to work with the Indigenous governments, the territorial government, municipalities on housing. At the end of the day, funding is needed. And so it's that $6 billion in new homes, as well as continuing the Reaching Home funding, which is, here in Yellowknife, Delaney, and a variety of communities across the North. And that is funding that communities are able to use to address the needs of their communities through homelessness, so avoiding homelessness and eliminating homelessness. So continuing that program, continuing the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is helping municipalities remove some of the barriers, incentivize development, which does work with more of those tax-based communities. But it is about, at the end of the day, the dollars needed.
All right. Thank you so much. And just a reminder that everyone will get a minute rebuttal after the end here with this question. Next, we go to Calvin Cuchilla with the NDP. If elected, what would you do to build more homes across the North? Please be as specific as possible. Calvin.
So in the Northwest Territories, we're definitely very diverse when we look at income across the board, especially if you look at even income support as a big category in our smaller communities. So housing has to be definitely diverse in the sense of market, non-market, social, and mortgage owned. So the people that can actually go get a mortgage and get a house in the community. So we definitely got to look at the population and what the population needs are. If we look, for example, in the Clean Show, we're definitely facing housing shortages, homelessness, overcrowding. And then when you look at homelessness, it's visible and invisible. And when I talk about we can get manufactured homes set up in the communities, but at the same time, it's more of a Band-Aid rather than a long-term solution. The reason being is because there's no skill set involved. And that's what I was talking with the community leaders, is that we're going to have to start getting trades to our communities. And I'll use Bitrico as example. You would do a program in Bitrico, move it over to N.W.T, to N.W.T, to Equity, and you'll use maybe like 15 individuals that you know would be successful in this program. And you have a blueprint of a house that maybe say a 3-bedroom model, and you keep that same blueprint for these 4 communities, and it gives the ability for people to pick up the skill set in trades, electrician, plumbing, carpentry, furnace technician, and it creates a skill set. So you got to start investing in the communities in the sense of infrastructure to create growth. So this will give us longevity as well as having skilled people within our communities, because what will eventually happen is your furnace coops out. You got to fly someone in either from one of the big servicing centers, and you're looking at anywhere between a $5,000 to $15,000 repair.
All right, thank you. Sorry for that. Again, you'll have a minute rebuttal. Kimberly, with the Conservative Party, we go to you next. If elected, what would you do to build more homes across the North? And please be as specific as you can.
There we go. Yeah, well, as we know, the housing costs are up across the board. Mortgage costs have risen, rent has risen. The Conservative Party has a plan to address some of these things. What we do know is that this is a direct consequence of the choices that governments have made. These costs have risen, and now, from what I'm hearing, the potential funding that's coming up is really around creating another government bureaucracy that, to try to help solve the problem that has been created. As some of the other candidates have said, the realities of building in the North are different. I think there are some good models that exist in communities where they've been able to increase the housing availability. But I think overall, what we're seeing is that some of the decisions that are being made around the way that the funding has been released, it's not necessarily effective in smaller communities. I think we have to take those realities into consideration. And here in Yellowknife, we see that vacancies are low, but there's still limited construction. And I think this is an issue that needs to be considered as well, like where we are failing potentially to bring land forward for development. I think there is land available, but those projects haven't started or they're way behind. As a Conservative government, we would work together to change that and make it important, for the city to make those investments so that we can see change in that area. We also have, of course, part of the platform around reducing taxes on new builds, also reducing the GST on new rental housing to create affordable units. Some of the initiatives we would look at is selling a pre-zone unused federal land so construction can happen immediately. And I'll leave it there.
All right, thanks so much, Kimberly. And lastly, Rainbow Eyes will go to you. If elected, what would you do to build more homes across the North? And please be specific.
So, yeah, thank you, Hillary. The Green Party has a really good platform that they released. But I think, above anything for the Northwest Territories, it has to be unique for all the communities, and, see what they have, see what renewable energy could be used for what community, and see what funding can go towards that. Because I feel like powering all of the communities is very important, and how do we make that affordable? But some of the points are, we could use covenants to make sure housing built with public money stays affordable forever. We can close loopholes to stop criminals from using real estate to hide dirty money. We could eliminate the unfair tax advantages for real estate investment trusts and stop corporations from buying up single-family homes. So, yeah, important that the funding also goes equally into the well-being of our people to help combat the homelessness. I believe, and I think the Green Party also backs the fact that everything is connected. The well-being of the people connects to, homelessness, but also if we focus on the well-being of our people, let's ensure that they also have, the affordable housing as well, funding that could go towards community housing, where we could put, people together, different communities together. So I think that would be, obviously very good. And as well, clamp down on big investors driving up the prices of housing. So yeah, I think
All right. Thank you so much, Rainbow Eyes. We are going to give each of the candidates now a minute for rebuttal. You, of course, do not have to use an entire minute. We'll start with Rebecca with the Liberal Party. Go ahead.
Thanks. I would just highlight a few other things. There's many things in our platform, but another one is supporting affordable home builders with an extra $10 billion in low-cost financing and capital for homes that support middle and low-income Canadians. So that's housing could be for students, for seniors, for veterans, for people with disabilities, for Indigenous housing, and more. So that's another program that we're looking to do. The other thing I'm big on is trying to kill two birds with one stone. And so linking childcare with housing development. So sites that are receiving federal financing or affordable housing funds is also looking to actually include childcare spaces in their development. Because if you do it from the start, it's cheaper than coming back to add childcare later. And we need those for those complete communities. And, here in Yellowknife, we know how long the wait list is. And we see we have one more person on the way that I'm sure folks are, really looking for. So childcare.
All right. Thanks so much. Kelvin, you have a minute.
So what I'm going to share is more from community leaders and residents of, with regards to funding announcement. There's two big things that prevent them from building. Sometimes there's a lot of red tape with the language of the policy funding, as well as the territorial government. A lot of the funding will get funneled through the territorial government and then to the Indigenous government's organization. And by the time that they would see the money, 2 years have gone by. So a good example would be we're in 2025. There was an announcement made in 2023, and a community was supposed to get a complex built. Did not happen. Costs has risen. So instead of that being a $3 million project, they're estimating that it's going to cost them now $5 million. So the longer that the territorial government holds on to funds that the federal government made announcements on that were supposed to go to these Indigenous government organizations and communities, cost is rising and no action to date. So that's what I've been hearing coming from the community leaders. And with that, okay.
All right. Thanks so much. Kimberly, to you now. You have a minute to speak to this.
Great, thank you. I think what I would just add is that the Conservative Party platform has some concrete actions that we can take to make sure that we can build on the housing successes that some communities have had in expediting construction. There are things that we can do to employ tradespeople and provide training and support for trades so that people in the communities and in Yellowknife can go on to get their red seals. I think that building, more housing in communities is going to address some of the other issues that the community members have been talking about in terms of, a sense of well-being for families and a sense of independence and being in charge of your life and these kinds of things. I think we can also ensure that local and Indigenous governments can profit from some housing developments and then use that for services and further development in their communities. And I heard lots of creative ideas when I was with community leaders around how they're actually doing those things now and how the federal government could support more of that in communities. To me, it's a key thing around empowering people in using the issue of housing.
All right. Thanks so much. Rainbow Eyes, you have a minute to respond.
Awesome. Thank you. I think one thing that the Green Party has put out is that Canada has so many resources that are being exported internationally. So what we propose is that all our resources, Canadian resources, stay in the country. That's the minerals, that's the logs, and I think the government can, because the North is remote, they could funnel it up first. There could be a special priority to ensure that the people of the North, the small communities, have the resources that they need at an affordable cost to build all the homes that they need, as well as the training. But I feel like with the Indigenous people, the land-based training is very important. How to do it culturally, learn from, tradition and how things were built, and really incorporate culture into home building, really put pride into our homes again.
All right. Thank you
Yeah,
so much,
thanks.
Rainbow Eyes. We're moving on to our next question now. Our next issue, reconciliation. We haven't heard much from federal leaders about what reconciliation looks like to them. Here is Sharon Allen giving her take on this.
I feel like they haven't really supported Indigenous initiatives and reconciliation because I feel like we're always left on the wayside as far as if you look around Indigenous communities, we're the first peoples, and we're not even mentioned as first peoples in the election and the campaigns, which is not great because we're the original to the country, and we're not acknowledged. And I don't know if they're going to be protecting the rights for Indigenous peoples, the rights to their resources and their lands, and protect the people, And I haven't really seen a lot of support for UNDRIP, the implementation of the human rights for Indigenous people and the rights to homes and the rights to education and things like that. And I don't see a lot of, funding for clean drinking water, with the unmarked graves and the mental health for the people.
All right, we're starting now with Kelvin Kachilia with the NDP. My question to you is, what would you do if elected to advance reconciliation in the Northwest Territories?
So again, speaking with the community and community leaders and elders, for myself, I'm a third generation resident school survivor. I lost my grandmother to alcohol at the age of 28. So my mother was raised by her grandparents. So with the Truth and Reconciliation and the calls to action, there's a lot of beautiful language within that's related to education, healthcare, housing, as well as how to advance sovereignty and our well-being. And with that, it's a great opportunity to use that report and calls to action to tackle our wellness and healing, using land-based healing as well as Western society methods to help our people that are struggling with addiction and drugs. It's definitely evident among my community visits. There's no community that's not suffering with that, and it's a growing problem. And at the same time, you can definitely link it to the housing crisis that our communities are feeling. But this Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action report talks about new and sustainable funding with regards to healing. And that's a great opportunity for all 33 communities that have been impacted by residential school to access that type of funding so that they can do land-based healing that's going to be community-led by an elders group or the community residents or even the leaders. So it's definitely a big ticket item outside of the big four, which is infrastructure, housing, cost of living, and definitely like affordability and housing. So I'm a true believer in that the federal government has to pick up on the Truth and Reconciliation report rather than cherry picking the easy action items that they can give themselves a pat on the back and put it to the sidelines and use, like I said before in my previous interview, loud noises from the South. Time and time again, a lot of our priorities are left on the table because Southern Canada or the U.S. is making too much noises.
Thank you so much. Kimberly, we'll go to you now. What would you do if elected to advance reconciliation in the Northwest Territories?
Thank you, Hillary. And a very important question, and one that I've heard a lot about through my work, my own lived experience, as well as my discussions with communities. And it's one that's important to me for future generations as well. My children and my grandchildren need to feel that these issues are actually being dealt with through a conciliatory process. And it's something that I, take very personally and very seriously. But I think, as the listener had said, we've seen an Ottawa knows best approach historically. And I think Indigenous communities need to be put back in control. They need to be in control of their land. They need to be in control of their decisions, and their future, and also in control of their money. So to me, reconciliation means that we have to move forward together. The injustices have led to so much poverty and crime and despair in the communities. I think there are so many core values that we share around families and traditions that get passed down through generations, through hard work and a lot of courage. And I think we should take the time to celebrate those things. A real priority for me is ensuring that we build strong, sustainable, and self-reliant communities. Many of them are on this road already, and in my opinion, getting Ottawa out of the way of Indigenous communities is one of the key steps to ensuring that they're able to strengthen that base, around language and culture, those elements of their identity that allow them to come strong to the table and to start to solve some of those issues together.
Thank you. Rainbow Eyes, we'll go to you now. What would you do to advance reconciliation in the Northwest Territories if elected?
Yeah, thank you, Hillary. I think a good first step would get all of the MLAs and government leaders to acknowledge that there was a genocide on Indigenous people. As I said earlier, the candidate for the Conservative Party, North Island, Vancouver Island, Powell River, has denied it, which is unfortunate. Gender-based violence, missing and murdered Indigenous women, support for this, violence against women, girls, and men needs to be a priority. I think Jody Wilson-Raybould did a really good article in the Toronto Star, and she said, which was titled, "Indigenous people have known many Trumps." The government must begin going to the Indigenous people and working together. Now is the time that our governments, traditional governments and public governments, must come together so the next 7 generations have a better future. This is so important. The Green Party has a good platform on Indigenous reconciliation. A few points are: act on every call to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Act on every call for justice from the missing and murdered Indigenous women. Fix the justice system that puts too many Indigenous people in prison. I can attest to this. Fund restorative justice programs that help heal both victims and offenders. Support Indigenous communities searching for and former residential school sites. There's a lot that the Canadian government can do right now for reconciliation. And it's acknowledging the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People. They have to act on it. And what we're seeing right now is that they're ignoring it. So we need a voice in the federal government to go into the parliament buildings and speak for the Indigenous people, to be the voice that is alone, and to continually push.
All right,
push.
Rainbow Eyes, thank you so much. If it's all right with everyone, I think just for time, because we have so much we want to get to, so many questions, we're going to skip rebuttals. We're still on the topic of reconciliation, so you can mention more here. I want to go to our next question.
Hillary, I
oh
didn't
my
get to
gosh,
answer yet.
my apologies.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Rebecca Alty, my apologies for that. With the Liberal government, what would you do if elected to advance reconciliation in the Northwest Territories?
Thank you. So our platform does have a number of initiatives, but one or two that I'd like to highlight is settling land claims and self-government agreements. And one way to do that is to increase the amount of staff time working on the finalization. And so right now it's about 3 days that negotiations are happening, so looking to extend that to be able to expedite the process. The other part is for the land claims and self-government agreements that are settled, really working with the Indigenous governments to build capacity and devolve more and more authority. So one of the recent examples would be with the N.W.T. and Canada provided $533.5 million over 10 years for the IRC to implement Inuit-led child and family services. And so we want to continue to work not only on child welfare reform, but also on devolving more and more authority and responsibilities to the Indigenous governments. Looking to continue to fund Jordan's Principle, the Inuit Child First initiative, funding for reclamation and strengthening Indigenous languages. There's also work when it comes to the economy and expanding the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program from $5 billion to $10 billion. Establishing a new Indigenous Climate Readiness and Adaptation Fund to continue to support Indigenous-led conservation initiatives. And that's separate from the work that we've been doing with Indigenous governments here in the Northwest Territories on Our Land for the Future, which will be the largest Indigenous-led conservation effort in the world. And when Parliament prorogued, we weren't able to get the bill across for the funding. So that would be one initiative that I'd want to get to right away. So there's a number of other initiatives, and encourage folks to read more, liberal.ca. Thank you.
All right, Rebecca, thank you so much for that. We're going to begin our next question. I want to play a clip from Chief Ernest Betsina from the Yellowknife Dene First Nation. Here he is talking about the apology he would like from the federal government for the legacy of Giant Mine.
We need support to finish it, and to actually that the apology and conversation would go forward and finalize with whatever party gets in with the federal department. And we were hoping that whoever gets elected in the N.W.T MP would support us and finish this important file.
That was Chief Ernest Betsina from the Yellowknife Dene First Nation. My question, starting with Kimberly Fairman with the Conservative Party. If you are elected, would you support apologizing to the YKDFN? And how would you want to see First Nations compensated for harms caused by the legacy of Giant Mine?
Thank you so much, Hillary. I think I'd start out by saying that I think Conservatives have and continue to do the hard work of sitting down and listening to our First Nations in the North. And I think that there are opportunities for sure for us to move forward. Legacy projects are one in particular where we've seen there will be federal investment, partnerships, definitely ways that we see these principles of more freedom for everyone, including Indigenous communities, and allowing Indigenous communities to control the money from those types of projects to make their own decisions instead of using a colonial model around some of these resource project developments. We have examples where we would implement, for example, the First Nations resource charge. And I think this could apply to projects that are also around the cleanup of some of the mine sites that exist now. But the idea here is that the resource company, and when we're doing work on First Nations land and in communities, that there is an opportunity for them to take advantage of the revenues from that, but also in direct relation to the resource economy, that we would cede federal tax room for First Nations governments. And this idea about having more of a partnership kind of approach, where instead of First Nations having to come to the federal government to receive those tax revenues back, they would actually have control of those. And I think that's all with the idea that this would not take away from any other agreements or rights, and if they'd prefer to keep those instead. I think these are important principles that would guide a go-forward plan, particularly with the Yellowknife Dene and the legacy projects that exist. I think that I'll leave it there.
All right. We'll go now to Rainbow Eyes. If you are elected, would you support apologizing to the Yellowknife Dene First Nation? And how would you want to see the First Nation compensated for harms caused by the legacy of Giant Mine?
Yeah. I feel like it's very important to acknowledge what the people have gone through and to hear from the people and what they've experienced. And if they're calling for an apology, I think an apology is needed. But I think organizing community events with all the leaders and all the people is necessary. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Now we go to Rebecca Alty of the Liberal Party. Do you believe that we should be, the federal government should be apologizing to the YKDFN? And how would you want to see the First Nation compensated for harms caused by the legacy of Giant Mine?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so the Liberal government has already agreed with that and has started a collaborative process protocol agreement. And so we have been in discussions with the Yellowknives Dene First Nation about working collaboratively to address the apology and the compensation with respect to the historical operation of the Giant Mine site. And so that agreement outlines the approach we'll work together. It establishes timelines, and the goal is for the resolution of the claim, and will include the Yellowknives Dene First Nation members outlining what the apology and compensation should look like. So I do want to continue this work, and again, I do believe it's best the Yellowknives Dene First Nation outline what that should look like.
All right. Thank you so much. Kelvin Kuchilia, last but not least, would you support apologizing to the Yellowknives Dene First Nation? And how would you want to see the First Nation compensated for harms caused by the legacy of Giant Mine?
So, yes, of course, I would like to see an apology from the federal government to the YKD events, as well as some compensation. And IGOs, not only here in Yellowknife with the Giant Mine legacy, but you can even use Dillon as example with Port Ranium. You can even use Tuck with example with the offshore drilling. You can even use the Clean Show example with Ray Rock. You can even use Fort Resolution with example with Pine Point. So there's a lot of abandoned mines across the Northwest Territories. And the government was the landholder at that time before devolution and before we even got sovereignty, starting with the Iqaluit, or sorry, not Iqaluit, but the Inuit there in the Tuck region, then the Gwich'in, the Satu, the Clean Show, and then we still got to do land claim for the Decho, Quechua, and Métis Nation. But a lot of our communities, we definitely need opportunities to clean up these mine sites, which then will provide opportunity of revenue streams, as well as having our Indigenous government organizations with their corporations to take the lead on these cleanups. And there's tons of them out there. Those are just a few that I name. But if you go back and look at a big list, there's a lot of mines that need to be cleaned up, and it's a gross action of the federal government and all these businesses that came up here and basically went bankrupt and left a mess. So I'd like to see an apology not only to the YKDFNs, but to all Indigenous communities across the North that have impacted their land, their water, and their animals. So it's very important to think holistically of the Northwest Territories as a whole when it comes to abandoned mine legacy with the federal government.
All right. Thank you so much. Moving on now to our next issue. We're going to delve into issues of drugs and crime now. Starting with Rainbow Eyes, you'll be first to answer this question. Communities across the territory are struggling with the social problems and violence brought on by the illicit drug trade. We've seen deaths, arsons, shootings. Here's Dennis Nelner of Lidlequin in Fort Simpson.
Some of the big ticket items I see is, and a number one barrier for economic development is the drug crisis that's going around in every little Indigenous community, N.W.T and down south, right? This is a crisis that, has been ignored totally. And, our people are suffering because of it, because we're the targets of those drug criminals, right? So I believe that the Conservative Party could deal with that far more efficiently, people that shoot or stab our people, those people shouldn't be walking around, free. They should be paying for their crimes.
Rainbow Eyes, we'll start with you. What would your party do about the illicit drug trade here in the Northwest Territories?
Um, yeah, it is a drug epidemic that's being seen all over. The Green Party has a section, and the funding must be put into the wellness of our people and taken away from big corporations. So this is where the funding could come from. But the importance of providing stable, long-term funding to all provinces and territories, training and hiring more healthcare workers to improve access and cut wait times, expand home care and community care, specifically in the Northwest Territories, ensuring that the small communities have the dentists, have the care centers, and specifically in the small communities, have it land-based caring, have the training for the members to begin to help heal their own people, ensure access to reproductive care across Canada, invest in public health care instead of allowing for-profit corporations to deliver more services. Sorry, that other one wasn't supposed to be in there. But this is a job epidemic all our communities are facing. In northern Alberta, right now, 468 nations and 4 reservations are banning drug dealers from their reservations. This is up by Fort McMurray. So they're calling for all nations to join in. There has to be funding from the federal government to support the nations who want to crack down on the crime and drugs in their community. There has to be funding from the federal government to help put their people in rehab.
Rainbow Eyes, we're gonna leave it there, and we're gonna go now to Rebecca Alty with the Liberal Party. What would your party do about the illicit drug trade in the Northwest Territories?
Thank you, and thanks for the questions. Definitely something that I've heard across the Northwest Territories, and again, something we've seen across Canada. And CBC just had a good article recently about the impact that the rise in cocaine production in Colombia is having in Labrador. And you could, when you read that article, substitute the community's name with any community in the Northwest Territories. So focusing on this from a two-pronged approach, one being law enforcement, the other being addressing the addictions and the trauma. When it comes to enforcement, it is about increasing RCMP, and so adding 1,000 more RCMP, 1,000 more customs officers, as well as allowing RCMP officers to have a general search warrant for Canada Post, so anything going through that. When it comes to addictions and recovery, there is $500 million to an increase in the emergency treatment fund, and that's supporting municipalities, Indigenous governments, community health organizations to be able to address this crisis and connect people with treatment faster. Housing's a big thing too. You know, we saw here in Yellowknife, the city with the federal funding was able to purchase a 5-bedroom home for the territorial government. So folks coming back from treatment were able to have a house to go back to on their healing journey. Other funding programs and that the federal government has supported recently is the Dene Wellness Warriors with their trauma and healing center that they're working on. Fort Resolution was on the land healing. In Fort Providence, there's funding for a 60-bed women and children's housing, and so again, being able to get women and children safe and into the healthy life. So it is really about addressing this health crisis, not only with law enforcement, but making sure that there's treatment options and being led by Indigenous governments as well as communities. So that's some of the stuff that I'd be advocating for and that we have committed to already in our platform.
All right, thank you so much. Kelvin, what would your party do about the illicit drug trade in the Northwest Territories?
So when we look at the drug trade and addiction as a whole, it's a global phenomenon that's happening everywhere. So we're not very isolated here with that problem. So we're not alone, and nor has anybody found the solution to how to best tackle it. But what I've been hearing from community leaders is that we have to address the supply and demand. There is definitely a demand, then which company is the supply. But when you look at the drug trade, again, it's very organized. There's people coming in 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out, and they're ranging from the ages of 15 and 20, very clean records where they're very hard to trace. And because of their quickness of getting into other communities, using abandoned homes, taking advantage of vulnerable people and getting into their homes, it definitely makes its challenges. So we're definitely going to have to increase the law enforcement aspect when it comes to the law, and having more police presence in the community and detachments is what's being requested, as well as giving autonomy to the communities to decide how it's best for them to address it at a community level. I think when you look at Charter of Rights and you look at the community, they want to ensure that they have sovereignty when it comes to making their own bylaws. And it's definitely very important, as well as the healing aspect, because if you can look at prevention, resources and support, as well as post-recovery, once you get rid of the demand, it will have an impact on the supply. And a lot of our traumas are linked to residential school, intergenerational trauma that's been passed on. Again, I'm a third-generation survivor. My children are fourth generations. So what we're seeing is that the third generation residential school survivors are different than the first generation. This is from boots on the ground, that they're a bit more dangerous, unpredictable, and they're exposed to it at a very young age. So they're needing to see something now, not come up with a plan and say, this is how we're going to tackle it. Like, give the community the resources they need, utilize the NGOs, and as well as look at the law aspect of. Okay. I'll respect the bill.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. With the conservative candidate, we'll go to you now. What would your party do about the illicit drug trade here in the Northwest Territories?
Mm-hmm. I want to be very clear that we will put the safety of people in the communities and in Yellowknife and Canadians. Their safety comes first. What we are seeing now in terms of the catch and release policies that are making our streets and our communities more dangerous, these are real concerns for people in the Northwest Territories. They're concerns that I share on a daily basis. We're faced with having to deal with the effects regularly. What we are seeing is that violent crime in the Northwest Territories in the last 4 years has been the highest in decades. Overall, crime is also rising a lot, and we can see this in many communities. And communities are worried and scared. And this is not something that we can take time to, and ignore. We never used to have this kind of drug crime here. I think that, some of the policies that we have around dangerous and repeat offenders, that they should stay behind bars, so they can't victimize communities anymore. I think that rehabilitation is important, but it can't happen if offenders are constantly in and out of jail. And I think that's an important point for people to consider. Also, on the other side of things, many of our families and communities are hurting from addictions. And a conservative platform includes, not just programs and policies, but people deserve our compassion and they deserve our help as well. We are looking at making an investment of $450 million that would create 50,000 new treatment spaces nationwide. And we want to focus on treatment options that work, where you get results. I think the other things that we're making sure that we're paying attention to is that life sentences for anyone that's convicted of 5 or more counts of human trafficking, which is also an issue here in the Northwest Territories, importing or exporting 10 or more illegal firearms, and fentanyl trafficking. We can't be soft on the penalties for these kinds of crimes.
All right. Thank you all for that. We're going to turn now to our next issue, climate change. We've been seeing some pretty significant impacts from climate change across the territory over the past couple of years. Forest fires, low water levels, melting sea ice. We have a question here from Yellowknifer Lois Little. She's with Local's Senior for Climate Project.
Canada stands at a crossroads. We can either continue down the path of increased fossil fuel dependency with all the environmental, economic, and social costs that that entails, or we can choose to embrace a transformative, forward-looking energy strategy that places people and the planet first. The Yellowknife Seniors for Climate Project wants to know what path you as a candidate will take from the crossroads that we are at. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to start with Rebecca Alty with the Liberal Party. What path would you take towards a, quote, as you heard Lois say, forward-looking energy strategy?
Yeah, so it is working with the territorial government as well as Indigenous governments on addressing energy, making sure that it's stable, affordable, and transitioning to green. So here in the Northwest Territories, the territorial government as well as Indigenous governments are looking at Tolston. So being able to support that project if it is moving forward. There's other communities that are looking at hydro, run-of-the-river, hydroelectric, and so looking to continue to work with those communities to advance their projects. The communities up in the high Arctic, Pawlatuck is doing a lot of work when it comes to community energy. So it is really working with Indigenous governments, territorial governments, and community governments to support their projects as they are looking to get reliable, stable, affordable, and green power.
All right, thank you so much. Moving on now to Kelvin. What path would you take towards a forward-looking energy strategy?
Before I talk about what we would do to eliminate our carbon footprint and how we can become more greener, we also got to recognize the impacts of climate change. Everyone's insurance went up, and it's definitely linked with climate as a whole across Canada due to low water levels, due to new records of flood, due to extreme fire behavior, all linked it to wildfire. And we have got impacted here. When you look at the barge season, we never had one since 2023. Direct link with low water levels, extreme fire behavior, 2023, 2024. A lot of our communities were impacted, and we also took on a big $70 million debt from wildfire evacuations, which then put the burden on the territorial government, and we haven't even got the reimbursement from the federal government with that cost related. And when you look at becoming greener, you got to look at the Tolson, the Bear River, and you also got to look at connecting our communities. It gives the ability to tackle high cost of living as well as infrastructure. And if you had more hydro dams, then you can definitely link them along these all-season roads, which then, again, will connect all the way as far as Inuvik. Like when we talk about the Mackenzie Valley Highway, all the communities want it right up to Inuvik. And that will help tackle the high cost of living, challenging climate change. And here in the Northwest Territories, we're only 45,000 people. So our impact on the global scale is very minimal. At the same time, we can definitely make our communities more greener, which then will give us the opportunity of employment. And we can utilize people that get trained in this field, especially across the territories with using our natural renewable resources.
Great. Thank you so much. Kimberly, we'll go to you now. What path would you take towards a forward-looking energy strategy?
Thank you, Hillary. So we are seeing the impacts of climate change in the north, and I think we need to focus on mitigation and adaptation. Certainly in the smaller communities, every leader that I talk to talks about the impacts of some of these events on people's sense of security and safety, and their ability to respond to that is really limited. I think in terms of green energy, this is a critical area for incentives and investment. You know, the way I see it, this is a tangible route to providing a cleaner environment is using technology, not by, dismantling our energy sectors. It's not going to be helped by raising taxes. It's not by importing energy from other nations and shipping Canadian jobs abroad. The carbon tax punished people in the north, and we should not punish people, but use use programs like the Clean Technology and Clean Manufacturing Investment Tax credits that would reward industries that lower their emissions. We need to work with territorial and Indigenous governments where we can to create projects that generate emissions-free energy. Some of those things that we see already, redirecting money from government bureaucracy towards infrastructure improvements that will protect Indigenous communities from the effects of climate change. Again, going back to the carbon tax and how that didn't work, I think what we should be doing instead is creating projects like hydroelectric projects, carbon capture and storage, nuclear power, things that, again, are generating emissions-free energy and protecting communities and helping us move forward on the issue of clean energy and climate.
All right, Kimberly, thank you. Rainbow Eyes, we'll go to you now. As N.W.T. Member of Parliament, how will... what would be your path towards a forward-looking energy strategy?
A reconciliation. I think that reconciliation is also directly connected to climate change and our connection to the land. I think we're disconnected from the land as a society, and understanding and respecting the land and caring for it is what we have to do. Humanity has to do it. John Valiant, who wrote The Golden Spruce, just wrote a book. I heard him speak in Vancouver about wildfires, and the wildfires in the Northwest Territories and in Alberta have been unprecedented. They're what they are calling 21st century fires because they have never been recorded before. The heat and how they move forward is unprecedented. This is all connected back to over resource extraction, cutting down our old growth forests. But the Green Party also has in their platform some key points, which is stop giving public money to oil and gas companies and invest it in clean energy instead. Hold big polluters responsible for the climate damage they cause. Create strict science-based limits on Canada's total pollution. Make companies prove they have real plans to deal with climate risk. I think if the federal government can connect with the nations of the Northwest Territories, it will help what they want to do, how they want to caretake for their land, and then just continue out and grow. Working together is what we have to do, and that is with climate change as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on now to our next question. It's about resource development. The territory's 3 diamond mines aren't expected to operate past 2030. Diamond mines employ over 1,000 Northerners and contribute roughly 20% of the N.W.T's GDP. Starting with Calvin Cachilia with the NDP, I'll start with you. What is your plan for the N.W.T economy after the mine shut down?
So this one here, we got to look at land claim negotiation and self-government for 3 regions and IGOs, so the Dutcho, the Quechua, the Métis Nation. Because again, once we don't have land claims settled, we don't know which lands are available for development, especially with half of our territories unsettled. When you look at the mine closure, we also have the lithium mine across from Yellowknife Bay that could be potentially be up and starting, as well as Fortune Minerals in the Clean Shore region. And if you put a Mackenzie Valley Highway from Wrigley all the way to Inuvik, you also make it possible to oil and gas or mineral exploration in the Sahtu, as well as the Beaufort. You actually have exploration companies in that area looking and doing sampling for natural gas and oil. So there is a lot of potential. At the same time, it's going to come back to land claim settlement, which is hindering development as a whole across our territories. And when you look at the hiring numbers, they don't employ a whole lot of residents, northern residents. At the same time, who's collecting the majority of these royalties? So for us to look at viability, our Indigenous governments have to receive meaningful shares of equity shares of these diamond mines or mineral mines or oil and gas. This IBA, 1.2 million fixed income is a joke. especially coming from the Clean Trail as a Clean Trail beneficiary. Like, we could have been talking about multi-million dollars that could have fixed the housing shortage in my region if these mines were serious about partnership rather than tokenism and taking advantage of us in an era that we're still negotiating land claims.
All right, Calvin, thank you so much. Kimberly, now to you. The Territory's 3 diamond mines aren't expected to operate past 2030. What is your plan for our economy after they shut down?
Thank you, Hillary. I think, recognition that the resource sector is actually one of the key supportive sectors for our whole economy here in the Northwest Territories. Unfortunately, we are about 10 years behind, I would say, in terms of having to respond with a plan. Exploration has been very slow or almost stagnant. And part of the reason behind that is that companies are reticent to make an investment in exploration when they aren't sure that they're going to be able to get a return on that investment. I think, making sure that there is clarity and certainty for First Nations governments and for the resource development sector is key. So going back to this issue of settling land claims and making sure that there are the resources put towards making those agreements a reality for people in the Northwest Territories, and then providing that certainty around exploration and development. The Conservative government also, as I've said earlier, has plans around and did the work of sitting down and listening to First Nations Indigenous communities who put forward a plan that included a First Nations resource charge policy. And this is a solution that First Nations want to see as well. It gives them direct access to taxes related to resource development, as opposed to having to go back to the federal or territorial governments and ask for those monies back. So it's a direct benefit for them when resource development projects go ahead on their land. I think the other key thing is, again, what we're aiming for is Indigenous communities being back in control of their money, which will, and their land, and really will put them in charge of making decisions for people for the future. And I have other things that I think, would get us and bridge us to a point where we can be back. Of course, the Conservative government is going to look at rapid sort of approval of those kind of projects, look for shovel-ready things, and make sure that we can move into an era where the economy of the North is booming again.
All right. Thank you so much. Rainbow Eyes, we're going to go to you now. What is your plan for the Northwest Territories economy after the mine shut down?
Yeah, I think from all of it, I do feel that the retraining is important for the people and the communities, settling the land claims and consultation with the people and communities, going into the communities and listening and hearing what they have to say. I can connect this with the DECO process and the ACO Dene process with the consultation with the land resources of the Indigenous peoples with the government, with the public government. This is really new territory because in the past it has been done wrong. So going forward, the right steps need to be taken. And again, it's working together. It's getting the community members together. It's getting the government together as equals and figuring out the best steps for the nations is what's important. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Rebecca, last but not least, what would you do for the N.W.T economy after the mine shut down?
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. I think there's so much opportunity here in the north, and we're just at the tip of it. So one of the things the Liberal government's doing is really focusing on those nation-building projects. So things like the Grays Bay Port and Road. Canada, we've got 3 oceans, and we need to make sure that we're using that. And with climate change and the change of that can become a really viable and important resource. And so making sure that we're ready for that. And other things that we're looking at is an Indigenous loan guarantee increase from $5 billion in that fund to $10 billion. Settling land claims, of course, is really important to ensure the certainty, and then to increase Indigenous participation in the economic opportunities in their regions. Our Land for the Future is across the Northwest Territories providing jobs. That's $375 million over 10 years. That's going to support conservation, its sovereignty, its climate change, its cultural preservation. Really looking at labor mobility, so to increase the opportunity for people to work across Canada. We see that in the Northwest Territories, the challenge of recruiting, and so removing some of those barriers. Looking at the tax credit, broadening the critical mineral exploration tax credit, modifying the clean technology manufacturing investment tax credit, expanding eligible activities under the Canadian exploration expenses. And also, with all this opportunity, really making sure that Indigenous governments have the capacity to participate. So doubling capacity in the Indigenous governments to be able to ensure that they are able to meaningfully participate in all the review processes. So there's a lot of things in that our party is looking to do over the next 4 years. And again, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or check out our website for more information.
All right, thanks so much. I'm going to hurry it along. We've had to skip a whole bunch of questions. We have one last question. And in order to get to it, we have about 8.5 minutes left. I'm going to have to keep you all to about 1.5 minutes, so 90 seconds if you're okay with that. Kimberly with the Conservative Party, we'll start with you next. Turning now to foreign policy and the war in Gaza. What is your position on Canada's role in addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza? And how would your government support peace in the region?
Thank you, Hillary. From a Conservative perspective, we think it's very important that, from a human perspective, we, of course, understand the response in Canada. But I think that we really want to make sure that this conflict doesn't create division in our country, and I can see that happening here. It's really worrisome for me, in fact, the way that it has created division in communities. It has hurt businesses, it has hurt families and individuals, and I, really feel that we need to make sure that we're not sort of taking that on and having it impact in our communities in the way that it has been. I'll leave it there.
All right. Thanks so much. Turning now to Rainbow Eyes with the Green Party. What is your position on Canada's role in addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza? And what would your government do to support peace in the region?
I think I'd like to keep my answer more simple. The Green Party is founded on 6 principles: ecological wisdom, non-violence, social justice, sustainability, participatory democracy, and respect for diversity. The Green Party's core principles are connected to those of many Indigenous values. The respect for life is important. I think all governments must call for peace and a call for people to stand up for humanity and to stand up against division. And that's in the Green Party's core principles: respect for diversity, working together, peacemaking. I think for the next generations, for our future, peacemaking has to be a core teaching a core value for all people. And we don't see that in the Canadian government right now. And that's an Indigenous value for working together, unity. And we have to call for it. And I think that all party leaders have to call for it. And we're not doing it, but we must.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn now to Rebecca Alty. What is your position on Canada's role in addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and how would your government support peace in the region?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So to date, the government of Canada has supported a sustainable ceasefire and has provided over $215 million in funding to address the needs of Palestinians in Gaza through organizations like the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine's refugees in the Near East and the Canadian Red Cross. Canada was the first G7 country to provide support to Gaza after October 7th, and it's one of the world's top donors of assistance to address the current crisis. So I would continue to support ongoing sustained action by Canada. Canada must continue to provide humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in Gaza who need international support to rebuild their homes and their lives. And I think we should be doing it through experienced and trusted humanitarian organizations like UNRWA that have the necessary on-the-ground operational support to respond. I also think that the creation of a Palestinian state, so Canada must do our part to proactively work with all partners to build that credible path to a two-state solution with an Israeli state and a Palestinian state. And so with my position, if I was elected, I'd be advocating for that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And with the final word from the NDP party, Calvin Cuchilla, what is your position on Canada's role in addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and how would your government support peace in the region?
So the federal government still has to continue to push for a immediate ceasefire in Gaza for the Palestinians. At the same time, we got to look at anti-Semitism, where the Jewish are also getting attacked unfairly with the escalation in the fight between the Palestinians and the Jewish community. So we definitely got to look at what is that doing here within Canada with the Jewish community being targeted unfairly. So we got to look at what's happening in-house at the same time as we provide support across seas to immediate ceasefire, and by providing funding for United Nations and Red Cross. So I've definitely be a partner in lobbying with local groups here in Yellowknife that are like they just recently had an event at the movie theater where they were doing fundraising with a film, and there's definitely a lot of passionate people here in our community that wants to see more action at a federal level, because when you are silent, you're in a sense being enabling as well. But I think when I look at the issue broadly, it's definitely two components to it right now, where there's anti-Semitism as well as the immediate ceasefire for the Palestinians.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. That is it for our forum tonight, our All Candidates Forum. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I know that it's been an incredibly short and busy election season. I know you've been traveling a lot, so I want to really thank you for making this hour and a half available to be here and to answer our questions. And thank you for listening in, our listeners. If you've been listening on CBC North Radio 1 for the last little while, or if you're tuned in on YouTube or on our website. I'm Hillary Bird. Big thanks to Calvin Cuchilla, representative from the New Democratic Party. Rebecca Alty, the candidate for the Liberal Party. Rainbow Eyes is here with the Green Party, and Kimberly Fairman is here from the Conservative Party. Of course, the polls, Election Day, April 28th. If you want to go back and listen to this forum or watch it, it will be available on our website and on CBC North's YouTube page. You can also listen to the Trailbreaker tomorrow morning. We'll be replaying some pretty large chunks of it if you want to hear the elections forum. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Big thanks to our producer, Mark Winkler, Stephanie Duell, and our technical wizard, Derek Thwat. So thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you then for their support. I'm Hillary Bird. Have a wonderful evening. We'll talk soon.